welcome back to RTA.
In this week's video, we're going to be talking about the current challenges in teaching, and we have an exclusive interview with you. We have an exclusive interview for you with Garfield Ferguson, and this is going to be part one of two of the interviews that we have with Mr. Ferguson.
But first, let's go ahead and get into the juicy news.
Ladies and gentlemen, so first I have a really good book that you guys need to go out and purchase if you are an aspiring educator or a veteran educator. It doesn't matter. If you are in the field of education, then this book is for you. It is entitled Before the Bell Rings, and it is authored by myself, Pantuita Tresvant. So again, if you're into education, this is going to be the book for you. On the other hand, if you're just experiencing conflict in the workplace, then you want to go out and purchase When the Sky is Blue, also authored by myself, Pantuita Tresvant. Both books can be found on barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, and at some of your local bookstores. So go out and make your purchases today. And now it's time for us to get into those lifestyle and beauty highlights. Ladies and gentlemen, so today we are talking about the current challenges that educators, parents, guardians, and students are facing in public school education today. And we have invited a very special friend of mine who is a former co-worker. He is an educator. He has a master's degree in curriculum and instruction. And today we're going to be getting into asking him questions and getting his viewpoints on, the different challenges that educators are facing today. So
without further ado,
we have Garfield Ferguson.
Woo!
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, so welcome to our channel. Welcome to the show today. And Amaya and I were just going to kind of piggyback off of each other with questions. And feel free to, to just answer. Well, obviously we want you to answer as honestly as possible. And, if you feel like you want to add something, please feel free to chime in. Okay. All right. So the first question that we have for you is, of course, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background information in education.
Okay. So thanks again for having me. So education, okay, I guess, the background about myself kind of fits very well with education. I was born in the island. I'm from Jamaica. I spent a lot of time in New York. New York is basically where we grew up. So we got here when I was a teenager. My family is big on education because my parents didn't go to college. They didn't even graduate high school because, parents back then, the main focus was just to support the family. So when we got to the States, education is a big deal. I went to city universities in New York. I went to BMCC first, where I got my associate in business administration, totally different from what I'm doing now, of course. Then I went on to City College, where I got my teaching degree. And that actually came about, it wasn't even planned, to be honest. I was not planning on becoming a teacher, but I guess once I was in college, I started doing some mentoring and tutoring, and that was kind of the bug. And then I, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I felt good about doing that. So I then applied to Teachers College. So that's where I got my degree in teaching. And I guess a few years after that, I left New York and I moved to Atlanta. And I worked in Gwinnett County, the county that I currently work at. I worked there, but at that time, I couldn't get a job as a teacher. There was just a lot of layoff. That was during the 2011, 2012, when we had that little, I guess you'd say, mini recession or whatever. So I was working as a paraprofessional, that, I guess I stayed with that for a little bit over 2.5 years. And yeah, that took me to Texas, where
Mm-hmm.
actually I worked at the school that you worked at for that 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm from a big family. We all, of course, value education. I guess the quote that I always think about, education is not a preparation for life, education is life itself. I think that's John Dewey. So for me, that's how I feel. I feel that serious about it. So because my family, my parents didn't go to college or graduate high school, they kind of push us to kind of do better. And education was that, I guess, that link, that path, or that stepping stool, if you want to call it that, to pretty much get out of the situation that we were in at that point. So going to school, getting an education, just trying to be better, I guess, than I accomplished a little bit more than my parents. That was our focus. So I guess education to me is basically what I'm about at this point.
Okay. All right. So we're just going to dive right into today's topic. And thank you for sharing that, by the way. But Amaya, you want to jump into it?
Yeah, so my next question number 2 is, can you walk us through your 2020-2021 school year? Because I know that was a difficult time for the entire world. So let us know how that went.
Right. So, wow, I think that year, I guess as teachers, we're not prepared for a lot of things. Because I know when I went to college for teaching, a lot of things that I encountered in the classroom, I did not get in college. I'm like, where what is this? But
Exactly.
I guess you learn. That's why I tell teachers, especially new teachers now, because of course I've been doing it now for 8 years. And then the few years that I work as an assistant teacher. So I've literally been in education since 2012, so it's like 10 years now. So I kind of feel like I've learned something from being in it for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But that year, we did not know what to expect. At that time, I was still working at the current Gwinnett County Public School. And I remember that we had to go digital, right? We had to go remote.
Yes.
The good thing was school, I don't think that we were impacted badly by it because we already had something set in place, because there were times when we would have stuff for the kids set up before the pandemic came about. What was different for me was I was now teaching from home, and we were doing this every day. It was, to be honest with you, at first it was very disruptive. I'm not even going to lie to you.
Yeah.
I remember the week before we were told we're staying home, they sent us an email saying, take your computer home because we don't know what's going to happen next week. And we took our computers home, and then we were being updated. Then we were told we're going to do this online. We're going to still have the kids come on because we want to keep the education going. And that was difficult. I'm not even going to lie to you. It was difficult because the kids that we had at the time, we had gotten used to them in the classroom, working with them. So that transition from the classroom to online did not go as smoothly as possible, as we wanted it anyway, because the kids, there was refusal to open their cameras. There was just a lot of issues. There were technical difficulties because sometimes the system would go down. So we were dealing with all of that in addition to a pandemic, and we don't know what's going to happen. So it was very stressful on the students, I'm sure, but also the teachers as well, because we didn't know when we were going to go back to actually being in the building. And we weren't sure how this is going to work, because it's not something we were trained to do at that point. So that year, at least the first when that started, it really started out rough. We kind of got used to it after the first few months. We went on the summer break. So we stayed out of school for 3 months when this started. I remember we were out in March, and we were just teaching online until the end of the school year. By the next school year, when we went back, Gwinnett County was one of the first county in Georgia to they started thinking about, we're just going to do a hybrid version where we're going to have some kids in the building and we're going to have some kids at home. So parents were given that option, right? And teachers were asked to come back in the building. We were a little bit troubled by it, because at that point we still were dealing with COVID, and there wasn't a vaccine yet. They were racing to get one, but we were asked to come back to work. Not a lot of teachers came back. Teachers quit.
Yes.
There were teachers who had health problems, or families at home that had health problems that they just couldn't come in.
Yes.
I had teachers on that I work with who we actually were really good friends, and they were like, I'm not coming back. I have my mom at home who's sick, and I can't take that risk. Because, I mean, as much as you might love what you're doing, you have to make sure that you take care of yourself and your family.
Right.
So
Yes.
that was kind of hard, because then the school had to be, pretty much running around trying to fill vacancies in a time when a lot of people were just not sure if they wanted to be around other people.
Mm-hmm.
But we went back. I remember having in each class probably about 10 kids, but I also had to teach online. So the Zoom was going live for the kids that are home, and the kids that are in front of us are wearing masks. And it was just a different time. Like, this was nothing I could, it looked weird to me. The kids, I didn't know what they looked like, because all I saw was the mask. And that affected the learning process, even though they were in school. Of course, it's very important for them to be in school. That developmental part of it is very important, in addition to the academic that they're getting. But there was still a difference, because now we're sitting in classes where we're so many distance apart from each other, where we're in masks. It's not the same, or it's not what they're used to, I guess I could say. And the teachers felt the same way, because we were given this shield thing to put by our desk.
It was chaos.
Teachers, if you want to go in your small group and you want to talk and get to know the kids, but you can't, because
you got to stay 6 feet away.
Distance as well.
Yes.
So it was, honestly, and it's the first time I'm really reflecting on it, because you asked this question. But it was really an interesting but challenging time. And I think for teachers, as well as the parents and the students, it was a hard time to get through, because we always had to keep adjusting. We don't know what the other day, what was coming, right? Mm-hmm. So we had instances where classrooms had to be closed down because someone had, so there was just a lot. And it was a constant, how can we make sure that we're constantly keeping up with what's going on, but making sure that the kids are still getting an education. So it was, to be honest with you, I would not want to go through that again. I guess if I could put it that.
Yeah, it was definitely.
It's good that we had that experience, but it's bad in a sense, because we weren't prepared for it, and it just wasn't the best when it comes to educating our kids.
Not at all. It was definitely a difficult time, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, a lot of teachers decided, including myself, to make that their final year in teaching. And even I've taught for over 22 years, but after having gone through that, it was as difficult as the decision. It was. I mean, I remember staying up nights, trying to decide, do I want to return? Do I not want to return? It was a difficult time for everyone. And so, so thank you for sharing that. But it's good to know that, you're in Atlanta, and here we are in Texas, and, this was happening across the U.S. So it was just a difficult time for everyone during that school year. So fast forward, the aftermath of the pandemic. So how do you feel like the schools having transitioned from in-class learning, cooperative learning, to moving towards remote learning? Do you think that has had effects on the students' social skills post the pandemic? So how has that affected, or do you feel that it's affected the students' social skills at all, with them having to transition to online courses for that long, lengthy period of time?
Yes. So it's interesting, because it's not really gone, right? We're able to manage it now, right? We have vaccines and we have everything that's going on. So I guess we're at a better place. I guess that's what I want to say. We're at a better place. But I think it's going to be many years before we can really talk about post-pandemic, right? When we're like, okay, this is definitely no longer an issue.
Right.
We still don't have 500 people dying a day in this country. But just to go back to the kids part, I know for a fact from what I've experienced that it affected the kids. It affected them really bad, right? It's not even just a mild. It was bad because I remember when we had kids back in the school as we were transitioning back little by little, and we were doing the hybrid version. The kids that I had in the classroom, they shut down. They weren't saying much. They weren't talking with each other. There were times when I wanted them to do, because I particularly love group work. I love when they collaborate. None of that was happening. They literally hid behind these masks, and some of them were hiding behind their hoodie. I mean, they just, because that time period that they missed, and depending on the school district that you were in, because Gwinnett was one of the school districts that went back, tried to go back at least gradually, within a certain amount of time. There are school districts that stayed out for longer in Georgia. So the kids, they did lose a lot developmentally. Socially, I saw that. They got back to school and it's not the same. It's not what the school environment is, right? Even though it's about education, it's also about socializing. Kids come to school because they want to see their friends, they want to talk, they want to be able to form these connections.
Right.
That was not there, right? I would see kids transfer from classroom to classroom, and it was just different. It was just, there was no excitement in the hallway. There was nothing.
Wow.
They were just walking to class.
That's terrible.
To be honest, it's like sucking the life out of the room. I guess in that sense, it was bad. And we as teachers, we talk about, wow, they're not talking. They're just not talking. Like, this is the problem, because I need them to talk to know where they are. Because, as we teach, we assess. We want to hear what you think. There was none of that happening. And
my gosh.
it was hard. It was hard for the teachers, but it was even harder for the kids because, remember, we were able to identify that, right? They're the ones going through that process, and we were seeing that. And we knew what the problem was. It's because of the time that they spent on the class.
Right.
While they were home, a lot of these kids were probably not able to intermingle with their peers as well, right? Because you're home during a pandemic, your parents are not going to tell you to go over to your friend's house to spend the night or, stuff like that. So they were being impacted not only in school for not being in school, but also at home. So fast forward coming back to school now, there's a lot of catching up to do. And as teachers, we know that you just don't catch up overnight. It's a challenging process to kind of get back up to where they should be. And I think that we're still going through that now. So it's a little bit better now, but I'm just saying that I saw it, and I know there's been many reports about it, and I honestly agree with them because it's something that I've seen.
So with that being said, have you ever experienced a rise in emotional concerns amongst the students since the pandemic? Yes. So the good thing is, and I'm hoping that a lot of schools implemented this. So we had Gwinnett County implemented social emotional learning, SEL, which is a big part of our curriculum now. So it's basically we can actually just seamlessly merge that into our curriculum, right? We want to check in on you. How are you doing today? How was your weekend? What's going on? Right.
So it's not just we're going to start learning what a central idea is in this text. It's, hey, let's touch base first and see what's going on, right? So we saw that because we were having more kids going to the counselor. We were having more kids dealing with issues that we probably had before, but not at the rate that we had. So, and we knew this was going to be a problem because I think that because of coming through that part of the pandemic and everything else that they were dealing with, we knew we had to set up systems in place to kind of help and support them with that. So the social emotional learning part of it for me, I love because I am one of those teachers where connecting with the students is very big for me, right? I want to know, hey, you guys have a game this week, right? If I can attend, I'll attend. Or how was your weekend? Or, hey, I went to see this movie this weekend. It was great. What do you guys do? Before I get into, hey, we're going to read this text.
Right.
So that, in a sense, is kind of helping out a little. It's gotten a little bit better now, but right after we dealt with that close down, I saw that a lot. And the good thing is the school district anticipated that, so they actually implemented a lot of things. Teachers counselors. I mean, everyone is on board to, you know what I'm saying, to kind of help with this. And, you know, parents' participation was important as well because, of course, they're going to go home and this needs to constantly happen, right? We need to check in with them and to know what's going on because we know with our younger generation, it only takes so much for them to really get to a place where it's hard to get them back to where they need to be.
Right.
So now, starting this school year, it was just, it's still a big part of our learning process. And I really do like that because now it's just kind of good knowing the kids so you can actually pick up on something really quickly. And then, Ms. Chesler, you probably know this, especially as language arts teacher, we see it in their writing. I remember when we got back, one of their first work that they had to do was a narrative writing. And I love that because they tend to be very honest in their writing.
Express
and
themselves.
as teachers, we can look, and you give them that space to share, right? We want you to share in this narrative, right? We need that little snippet. Share something you want. You have total control over what you're going to write. And in those moments are sometimes some of the most, the times they're the most honest, and because they know you're the only one reading it. But as a teacher, you're able to see that, and if there's something of concern, you can turn it over to the people who can best help them. So, yes, there are things in place. Yes, we're going to be working on this for a long time. We have to remember that there are some kids who left 6th grade, and by the time they're fully back in school, it's 8th grade. So they've, like 2 years, they haven't really been in school constantly, right? There are some kids that were in elementary school, and by the time they're back, they're in middle school. So the transition and the loss there, it's like, so, I mean, yeah, it's something that, I've had students who talk to me, they're like, Mr. Ferguson, I was in 6th grade when I got back, I was going into 8th grade, like, what? So, and I'm kind of trying to be, looking at it from their perspective, like, those are very important years to this. I'm like, wow, I'm so sorry to get those back, because you can. So, we're going to be dealing with this for a while, though.
Yeah, that's for certain. Okay, so with that being said, has the dropout rate increased? Have you noticed, or has there been more students that are having a problem with absences?
So I'm trying to think. I know that last year we had there were definitely more challenges with just the students showing up to school every day, and I guess in a way I can see why that is, because there were still parents that probably they weren't fully comfortable with them just being there. There were still the pandemic is still rampant. Some parents. There was the issue with who wear masks and who should wear masks. So there was just so many other things that were affecting attendance. So it's kind of hard to say, is it that they just don't come to school, or is it because there's concerns? So there are variables that it's kind of hard to kind of pinpoint that. In regards to dropout rate, I didn't see anything in my school that I would call for alarm, because, you're going to have a few kids that are contemplating that, or there's certain issues, but I didn't see anything that I would say, wow, it's like huge, and this is something there's some red light right here. I did not see that. But in regards to attendance, there were some challenges with that. But then again, as I said, it could be based on what's going on, just the climate and everything that's happening. That could be because, parents are just going to be concerned, and they should be. Maybe you don't want your child to be back in school when this is still happening, and the kids tend to, kind of be close to each other, and sometimes they forget what's going on. This is not something they should be worried about. This is for us, right? So that could be the reason why we definitely did see some attendance issues. But in regards to dropouts, I didn't see much of that. Maybe because I'm in middle school, parents have more control over that.
Today's food for thought. Education is the most powerful weapon
which you can use to change the world. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's video. We hope you liked it and got lots of inspiration from it.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more videos like this to come.